The honor of the court is at stake, and this time it's not because of who is in the defendant's seat. The eyes of the nation turn to the 12th Federal Court on that muggy morning. Cameras positioned, security on edge, and a woman sitting silently, Jasmine Crockett, her gaze fixed on the judge, unblinking. What seemed like just another routine hearing quickly transformed into a spectacle of power and humiliation. Judge Rupert Hensley, known for his coldness and veiled disdain for progressive figures, interrupted Jasmine with a dry laugh. "Congresswoman, this is not Congress. Here, I am the one who speaks," the audience murmured. Some laughed, others looked at the floor. Not Jasmine. She merely tilted her head as if engraving every syllable in the marble of memory. Her fingers lightly touched the edge of the blue folder containing sealed documents that had yet to be presented. Outside, protesters were shouting. Inside, the atmosphere grew thick, electric. When the judge slammed the gavel, ordering silence, he did not know. He had just initiated the most disastrous minutes of his career. He stood to leave the room, but Jasmine stood up as well. And when she spoke, she did not use the microphone. She didn't need to. The entire room stopped. Even the stenographers took their fingers off the keys. "Your Honor, please, stay. This is not over. Not for you." The hearing had a clear purpose: to evaluate possible abuses committed by federal agents in marginalized communities. Jasmine Crockett, a congresswoman and former civil rights attorney, had requested her participation as a special observer after anonymous allegations pointed to evidence tampering and judicial omission. But what should have been a moment of institutional listening quickly turned into a personal attack ring. Judge Rupert Hensley, a veteran of the system, appointed decades ago, through obscure alliances between old parties, did not expect to be questioned. His name had always passed unscathed behind the scenes. He was considered untouchable. That morning he did not see a woman. He saw a threat, and he responded as men of the old power respond, with sarcasm and authoritarianism. "The courtroom is not a stage for activism, Congresswoman. The system functions just fine without your militancy," he said, sinking the words in calculated venom. But what few knew was that Jasmine had received 2 days prior a confidential dossier with disturbing details, sealed court orders, quietly altered sentences, and a direct connection between Hensley and a private security firm accused of extrajudicial killings. The conflict was now no longer between a legislator and a judge. It was between truth and power, between legality and institutionalized abuse. When silenced, Jasmine understood that court was not corrupted by negligence, but by design. There was a network, and the man who humiliated her with cutting phrases was the same one who, according to protected witnesses, had ignored requests for habeas corpus from young black individuals, sending them to privatized jails linked to his campaign funders. The silence of the court was complicit, and she would not accept it. Not there, not in front of the people. Jasmine Crockett did not need applause. She knew exactly what she represented by entering that room: the interruption. Each of her steps echoed as if the floor demanded respect. She wore a dark suit unadorned, just a small brooch of the American Constitution on her chest. But it was not the outfit. It was the silence that settled around her. Judge Rupert noticed. The lawyers noticed. Even the security guards seemed to adjust their posture as she crossed the threshold. Jasmine did not read speeches. She looked, firm, direct, as if she were beckoning the truth to appear, even if it meant bleeding someone in the process. Her tone was controlled, almost sweet, until it needed to cut. Then, out came the steel. She had faced the system before, in southern courts, in protests suffocated by tear gas, at meetings where she was the only woman, the only black person, the only one who didn't smile to please. That morning, however, there was something different about her, a mature weariness, a kind of contained fury that reflects in the eyes of someone who has seen too much. Jasmine didn't enter that courthouse to fight with words. She entered to put an end to a web of lies disguised as sentences. She carried documents in her hands, yes, but also voices. The voices of mothers who buried children without trial, the voices of men forgotten in prisons with prescribed sentences. And at that moment, before Rupert Hensley, she was more than a representative. She was the presence that the powerful try to avoid, the living conscience of the people. Representative Crockett, this court is not a political arena. Save your speeches for Congress. Judge Rupert Hensley's voice cut through the air like a whip. His tone was dry, cynical, and carried the weight of decades of impunity between the lines. He didn't even look her in the eyes. He spoke with his face tilted down as if to say, "You are not even worthy of my gaze." But Jasmine did not react with anger. She did not tremble. She simply stood up, slowly, with the blue folder in her hands, and replied without raising her voice, "I didn't come to give a speech. I came to remind you that justice is not a hostage of the robe." The phrase silenced the room. The judge sighed, shook his head mockingly, and smiled. A short, cold smile from someone who underestimates. "What do you know about justice, Representative? Who exactly do you represent? Angry YouTubers? Spoiled students?" The provocation was clear and disrespectful, but Jasmine approached the podium without hesitation. She took a paper from the folder, looked the judge in the eyes for the first time, and said, "I represent Kevin Darnell, 19 years old, imprisoned without evidence. Habeas corpus denied by Your Honor. He died in his cell 4 months later." The judge shifted in his chair, a slight tremor in the fingers of his right hand. The mention of the name was unexpected. "This court is not here to revive closed cases," he said, trying to regain control. Jasmine then placed a second sheet on the bench. Photos, records, altered sentencing stamps. "I didn't come to debate with you. I came to reveal what the country does not see. And if necessary, yes, I will order arrests." The tension turned into a physical presence in the room. Even the wall clock seemed to stop. And the judge, for the first time in years, had no response. Jasmine opened the folder. Slowly, methodically, she pulled out a sequence of numbered documents, each with an official seal, notary signatures, and colorful attachments. Then, she activated the podium microphone and, unhurried, placed the first paper in view. Sentence number 8372A. Defendant, Darnell Kevin. Preventive detention ordered on May 3rd. Evidence presented, none. Prosecution's allegation, suspicious conduct. Judge's note, high social risk. Your signature, Your Honor. The judge narrowed his eyes but did not speak. Here is the forensic report from the Institute of Legal Medicine. Darnell died with 14 puncture wounds on his body. A riot, according to the prison, but the cell was locked. The security video disappeared. Who filed the request for investigation? Your court. The first reactions arose from the back of the room. Whispers among journalists, exchanged glances among the attendees. But Jasmine did not stop. She took out the next document. Sentence 9321C. Case of Annabelle Torres, 62 years old, accused of stealing food from a grocery store, no prior record. House arrest denied. Reason? Risk of reoffending. She died on the 4th day of detention. Hypertensive, diabetic, without medical care. The judge responsible, Your Honor? She then displayed a report. It was from the NGO Invisible Justice, dated 2 months ago. It detailed 47 similar cases, all linked to the 12th Federal Court. Most of the defendants were black, poor, or indigenous. More than half had not even been tried. Jasmine began to display photos. A mother kneeling in front of a penitentiary. A boy holding a letter from his father, who had been imprisoned for 5 years without a sentence. A medical report with an official stamp, and the remark, "Death by omission." Finally, she revealed the last piece, an audio recording. The voice was that of Judge Hensley himself, in a conversation with the director of the private security company, Argus Shield, hired to manage state prisons. The final phrase of the audio was devastating. "Let the troublemakers rot in there. If 1 or 2 have to disappear, so be it." The sound echoed through the hall. A sepulchral silence fell over the courtroom. Jasmine looked at the judge. "What you, Mr. Hensley, are doing is not an error. It is politics. It is a crime. And justice today will look into its own eyes." Rupert Hensley remained seated, but something had changed in him. The face, once upright and impassive, now showed cracks. The shoulders, which had borne decades of unquestionable authority, were lower, as if they finally felt the weight of the mantle he wore. He tried to respond, tried to raise his voice, but Jasmine's eyes held him captive. They were eyes that did not ask for respect. They demanded accountability. "Those accusations are distorted," he stammered. His voice choked. "I have worked for years for this court, for order. But order for whom?" The question hung in the air, needing no words. Jasmine approached the bench, looking directly at the judge. Her voice was now softer, slower, almost whispered. "Do you remember Reginald Bell, 16 years old? He was tried in record time, without a lawyer present. 3 weeks later, he died in the detention center." The name made Hensley's eyes tremble. Jasmine continued. "His mother wrote to me she had no money, no diploma, but she said something I never forgot. They say judges sleep in peace, but if he dreams of my son, let it be a nightmare." At that moment, the judge's hands gripped the arms of the chair. The slight tremor intensified. Sweat appeared on his forehead. He looked around as if searching for air, but the air in that room was justice, and it suffocates those who deny it for too long. "Were you ever young, Judge Hensley?" Jasmine asked. "Did you ever believe in justice before becoming part of the machine?" He did not respond, but his eyes did. There was something there, a memory, an old regret he never had the courage to face. Finally, she said, "The mantle you carry is not a symbol of power. It is a symbol of responsibility, and now it weighs heavy, because the people have awakened, and they are watching." The court was silent, but in the recesses of the judge's mind, a sentence had already been pronounced by himself. With the room steeped in silence, Jasmine took a step back. She slowly put away the documents, as if concluding a ritual. There was no longer a need to prove. What needed to be seen was seen. What needed to be said was said. Now it was time to offer a way out, a reconstruction, not revenge, but the redesign of the system. "I did not come here just to point fingers. I came to propose a path, because justice without structure becomes rhetoric, and the people are tired of speeches." She then raised a small booklet, white cover, simple title, Judicial Transparency and Accountability Act, PL 481-25. This bill establishes public broadcasts of all criminal hearings, objective and auditable criteria for preventive detention decisions, and a national council with civilian participation for sentence review. She looked directly at the representatives of the public ministry and continued. It also proposes limits on the discretionary power of judges in situations where the defendant's freedom is the only obstacle to the profit of outsourced companies, and more. It revokes the agreement with Argus Shield and authorizes immediate federal investigation into financial relationships between judges and security companies. A murmur began, but she raised her hand and completed. And finally, it proposes that any judge convicted of abuse of authority lose the right to mandatory retirement. No more rewards for those who betray justice. The impact was immediate. Even the judge's own aides began to exchange glances. It was an ambitious project, but with its feet firmly on the ground. It wasn't a cry, it was a plan. Jasmine then closed the booklet and concluded, "I believe in courts, but I believe above all in the people. And if justice wants to regain its legitimacy, it will have to come down from its pedestal and listen." This project is the beginning. A new cycle was being proposed. Not with weapons, not with resentment, but with structure, courage, and letterhead. She took a deep breath. There was no longer a court. There was no longer a judge. Just the country watching. Jasmine looked up as if seeking ancestral strength and then spoke. How many mothers have buried children without knowing why? How many families received only silence as a response? How many letters went unanswered in the drawers of this system? Her tone was no longer one of denunciation. It was one of mourning, a collective mourning, denied for decades. When a judge signs an unjust sentence, it's not just a name he condemns. It's a future, a story, an entire people that he decides to erase. She pulled a folded sheet of paper from her pocket. It was a letter. This was written by an 8-year-old girl, the daughter of Geronimo Alves, killed in custody. She wrote, "Mrs. Jasmine, my father was innocent. He promised me he would come back. I waited. Every day. I still wait." Jasmine fell silent for a few seconds. The entire hall held its breath. A soft, dry sound of quiet sobbing broke the silence at the back of the room. What are we doing? When did justice become a private club of commissioned sentences? When did we forget that the robe is just fabric, and that underneath it there is a human being who also makes mistakes, who must also be held accountable? She faced the judge once more, and this time he lowered his eyes. "I do not hate this court. I believe in it, but not as it is. And yes, as it can be. A place where an 8-year-old child does not need to write a letter to have hope." Cameras were broadcasting live. In distant homes, the elderly cried. Young people paid attention for the first time in a public hearing. Jasmine then concluded, "The people do not want revenge. They want justice. They want answers. They want to know if there is still time, if someone up there is listening." And at that moment, the court was no longer the center of her speech. It was the entire country, and everyone without exception felt like defendants inside. The next day, the country woke up different. In newspapers, on social media, on the streets, only one thing was being talked about: the court became the defendant. The recording of the hearing went viral in minutes. Hashtags took over social media. Justice for the people. No more immunized robes. Jasmine spoke for everyone. Law students organized vigils at the doors of the courts. Civil entities filed petitions to support Bill 48125. Universities cancelled classes to debate the case. In the chamber, opposition leaders and even some historic allies of Judge Hensley fell silent. The National Justice Council called an extraordinary session. In record time, Hensley was unanimously removed and placed under formal investigation. But the most symbolic moment did not happen in Brasilia. It happened in the Capão Velho neighborhood, in the outskirts of São Paulo. There, a girl named Leticia, just 8 years old, held a handmade sign with crooked and firm letters. "My father won't come back." But now the truth wears a suit and heels. The people understood. This was not just a judicial victory, it was a wound being exposed. It was the beginning of a new cycle. And Jasmine? She continued in silence, refusing interviews. But everyone knew, when she speaks again, the country will stop to listen. If this message touched your heart, if you believe that justice only makes sense when it truly reaches the people, subscribe to the channel. Share this message with those who need to wake up. And leave your comment. Do you think there is still time to change this system,